A NATO summit in Ankara that took an unexpected turn.
If there's one word that comes out of today, it's unification. I've never seen anything like it.
Deals to build American weapons in Europe and a US license for Kyiv to build Patriot interceptors inside Ukraine.
We're going to give a license to you to make Patriots. That's pretty cool, right? Larry. This way you can't complain that we're not giving them enough. I say, make them yourself.
The capricious US president threatened to skip the summit. He arrived demanding Greenland. He savaged Spain once again, but left Ankara insisting the US commitment to the NATO alliance was solid.
But halfway through this two-day meeting, the president detonated his ceasefire with Iran.
I think it's over. I don't want to deal with them anymore. They're scum. You know what scum is?
The alliance is rearming for one threat, while its most powerful member squares up to another. We'll hear from one of NATO's top military commanders. Welcome to the Security Brief. Mikey, what a week we've had. Let's start with the Patriot announcement. President Zelensky has been seeking permission for months to build Patriot missiles inside Ukraine. How big a deal do you think this is?
I think it's huge. I think there will be a slight calmness from Zelensky, but they're not out of the woods. You only have to look at what happened, Christian, in July. 49 Russian ballistic missiles launched, only 4 intercepted. The Patriot, as well, is the only system that Ukraine has that can actually stop Russian ballistic missiles. And the interceptors are running out, and that's a huge issue.
And I know, covering the summit at the G7 just a few weeks ago, right, Zelensky was appealing to his NATO allies for this permission. The problem has always been supply, because it's the Americans that make them.
Yeah, it is supply, and it's a supply problem based on massive use by the Americans of PAC-3 interceptors during Operation Epic Fury. Just to give you an example, I think we spoke about this the other day. There were 1,800 PAC-3 missile interceptors that were expended in the first 2 weeks of the Iran war. That's a huge issue, because around 650 PAC-3s are made per year. So when you add that all up, that's a 3-year supply line chain in order to replace 16 days worth of interceptors. So there's a chronic shortage. Germany, they already have a license for developing PAC-2 and PAC-3 Patriot missiles. And a little bit later, we'll go on to the difference between PAC-2 and PAC-3. And Ukraine and President Zelensky has been saying for months, they've got the engineers, they've got the capability, just give us the license and the ability to do it. And this week, apparently, Trump relented.
Right, go on then. Tell us how the Patriot missile system works and why there's some complexity around it.
I think, firstly, the caveat is that this is a license, right? It's not a missile. It's permission to build a factory that doesn't exist yet. Supply chains, facilities, you've got sensitive technology, and every one of those particular bits, whether they're made in the same location or whether it's disparate locations, they all will become a target
for the Russians
inside Ukraine. So it does change Ukraine's future, but we're talking years, we're not talking months in the making, and that's obviously an issue as well. I just want to give the viewers an idea of what Patriot is when we talk about Patriot. Let's just take a look at a quick video here. It's more than just a missile, okay? We talk about it as a missile, but it's not. It's a battery. And what a battery includes is, it includes a radar. So the radar, for example, has the ability to look further than the PAC-3 can intercept. So just because a radar can see possibly out to 100 miles, it doesn't mean that the effective use of the PAC-3 is at 100 miles. It's much closer in, but it can detect the threat earlier. You're talking about C2, Command and Control Center. You're talking about the launchers as well as the missile itself. So the PAC-3, which Zelensky said today is the best, the difference between the PAC-2 and the PAC-3 is the PAC-2 is the missile is specifically designed to take out aircraft and cruise missiles. It's the PAC-3 bit that Zelensky's after, and that's the bit that goes after the ballistic missile threat. One battery is about $1 billion, so it's not chicken feed. But I think what's interesting is we spoke to Supreme Allied Commander Transformation, Admiral Vandier, earlier on, and listen to what he's got to say about the Patriot acquisition.
So the context is today the production of Patriots is limited, and so the US are struggling with the industry they have to procure all the customers they have. Would they be in the Persian Gulf? Would they be in the Pacific or in Europe? today having more production of that kind of weapon, would it be Raytheon or would it be European made, would it be Ukrainian made, is the challenge today. The Ukrainians are working hard on their own domestic ABM system. And I think the more we will have, the better.
Maybe we should just list the deals that were made this week because they were significant.
So $40 billion for counter-drone technology over 5 years, and a pledge to train 5 times as many drone operations by the end of next year. That's at the end of 2027. We're already seeing that. The Ukrainians have been training in Sweden on big exercises, and the UK is developing drone tech with Ukraine Deep Strike. That's called Project Breakstop, and one to look out for in the future as that evolves.
Yeah, and the other thing that obviously is a gap, I think NATO would confess to that, would be eyes in the sky, geospatial intelligence.
Yeah, when you come to sort of the vulnerabilities, as we say in the military, the critical vulnerabilities, intelligence is a huge one. Eyes in the sky obviously informs that intelligence. So there's a deal to buy up to 5 Triton, they're called MQ-4C. I think we've got a picture here of the MQ-4C. So it's a
Again, not chicken feed.
No, not actually, absolutely. Well, it's 200 million. It's about 220 to 240 million a unit for one of these. But it was procured by the US as a long-range maritime reconnaissance drone, and with that, it's got massive endurance. But it's really expensive, and there's obviously a plan to take that version, the maritime capable version, and develop and adjust that capability suited for the.
And if you were building contingency plans for the end of the war in Ukraine and maintaining the peace, that would be crucial.
Yeah, I mean, eyes in the sky. So we call it imagery intelligence and electronic intelligence. And a lot of these drones have sensors that combine the both of those. And then the other thing as well is that these drones do what's called POL, pattern of life. And so pattern of life basically is looking at the behavioral activities around a target. So the longer that drone can stay airborne without having to come back, then obviously the pattern of life is going to be is going to be more effective for use by the targeteers inside the Ukrainian planning.
And in terms of airborne early warning systems, interestingly, NATO turning to the Swedes and to Saab and away from Boeing.
Yeah, I don't think we should underestimate the messaging of that, if you like, that reliance on Boeing to provide that capability. And now NATO's decided to go with the Swedish company Saab. Globalize is the airborne early warning aircraft that they've chosen. The Swedish PM was talking to us about that yesterday. That interview is actually, for the viewers, that interview's on YouTube on the Security Brief playlist. And I think we've got a picture here of the E3. It's the big aircraft with the radome on the back, and what it does is it paints what's called an air picture for fighters to be able to go in and identify targets. But from that list, you can read the alliance's anxieties straight away. You can read it from the receipts, which is all you need to know. So it can't see enough, doesn't have enough intelligence, and it can't shoot down mass-produced drones cheaply. And I think they're the big takeaways from the deals.
So we've talked a bit about defence there against the incoming threats, as they would be perceived, but deterrence works both ways.
Yeah, it does. And I keep coming back to this question. Why isn't NATO playing Russia at its own game? Moscow's low-tech, cheap-produce, mass-produce drone barrage is the most effective conventional weapon that I think Russia has outside of anything else it's got.
Beneath the nuclear threat.
Exactly that. And it's been used to great effect. And Ukraine has stepped up to the plate to be able to counter that one-way attack drone threat. We're calling it, on this program, a conventional non-nuclear deterrent that sits below, as you say, the nuclear threshold. So it is the question that we put to Admiral Vandier. Take a listen to what he said in terms of NATO's response.
So NATO is working on a deep precision strike. That means that we will acquire in the next month, years, a massive amount of ammo that will be able to strike and strike and strike. It's a way to deter bad denial. That means that a massive gathering of troops will just be under a massive strike umbrella. And so it's what we need to achieve. Today we have some deep strike capabilities with exquisite, complex, expensive weapons. And we know that we are not able to mass produce these. So we will complement these weapons that are useful for highly defended targets with more massive, cheap ammo that will be able to just depress the pressure we could have on the front line.
Outside of the drone threat, Admiral, the other main challenge is the Russian ballistic and cruise missile threat. NATO's air defence umbrella is known as Aegis Ashore. Given the numbers that have been fired at Ukraine in recent months, do you still think that system is fit for purpose to defend Europe?
So it depends what we fight. In fact, the Aegis Ashore is well done and it's sufficient. It's very efficient against specific ballistic missiles. You have a lot of programs now in Europe. Speaking, for example, of the Steel Dome in Ankara, in Turkey, you have the same kind of a program with Italy, with the French, with MBDA. So all these companies are working on strengthening the ABM, anti-ballistic missile systems. The numbers are in our favor because ballistic missile is expensive, and so the number of missiles that are able to hit them, I think the balance is pretty good. It's much more the numbers, and the ramping up of this production and the strengthening of the systems is ongoing. Today, Israel is doing well on that. And so I'm confident on the fact that we can play this battle.
In general terms, when we look back over the 2 days, Mikey, is it crisis over in NATO?
Well, let me come back to you with a question. Would you put your house on that?
No.
Right. Okay. I think that's all we need to know. So look, one, what people need to know is that the Pentagon is in the midst of a 6-month review of its European presence. That's key. At the same time, troops are being cut again from Europe. Yeah. There are plans to cut jets from NATO, carriers withdrawn, and I think
refueling jets.
Yeah, air tankers, intelligence,
key strategic asset.
Yeah, but I think the thing that underpins all of that is at the diplomatic level, and it's that Trump blows hot and cold on this. So unpredictability hasn't gone away, and it's what NATO will still have to navigate. I think number 2, let's go back to Greenland. Trump said this week he's, quote, very upset, unquote. Prime Minister Fraser, the Prime Minister of Denmark, spoke in a language, I think, that she made sure that Trump understands, saying that it's not for sale. Greenland is not for sale.
Yeah. Well, he's very transactional. He probably does understand that language. And then 3, there's Iran.
Yeah, there is.
Which blew up mid-summit.
It did blow up mid-summit. I think we probably predicted that when we were in Lucerne covering the MOU. Each side blaming the other. Typical. It's not something we haven't heard. What did the US do in response? They hit 80+ targets overnight, including Karg Island. For the viewers, I've done an explainer on that. We've covered it a lot on the security brief. It's effectively the IRG's lifeline when it comes to 90% of Iran's oil that's exported in the IRGC. Obviously, benefits from that. You've got all sanctions that are now back. There's more strikes threatened tonight. And here's the NATO problem. Trump has spent the entire summit complaining to allies that they were unwilling to help. He called it a test, and I don't think that's going to be rhetoric that goes away anytime soon.
Yeah, and if that war does reignite, which at the moment, let's face it, it looks like it might, then that pressure on NATO comes back harder.
Yeah, it's not gone away, and certainly it does come back harder because the longer this goes on, the more frustrated President Trump is going to get, and the more he's going to want to bring people into this problem. It goes back to the big questions, the fundamental questions facing the alliance. Is it a defensive pact against Moscow, the spread of communism that it was originally designed for, Article 5, an attack on one as an attack on all, or
an offensive alliance? Yeah,
exactly. Is it an offensive alliance? And there's got to be some big questions asked within NATO to see if they're willing to sort of meet Trump halfway on that offensive component. Ankara, I think, has papered over that crack. And the resumption of the war may test that crack.
Just a final thought. We had on the set here just a few weeks ago Secretary John Kerry, instrumental when it came to the negotiation in 2015 on the JCPOA, the former Iran nuclear deal. And he talked in that interview about the painstaking diplomacy, the choreography of every word, the weight of what was discussed in those meetings. And then at this summit this week, President Trump labels the Iranians scum, vicious, violent people, a waste of time, he said. What do you think that shift in language tells us?
Certainly not statesmanlike. I think that's probably number one. But what it does do is it exposes the massive shift in the way that diplomacy is now being carried out. Secretary Kerry's view, his worldview, was that words are instruments. You negotiate in private. You give the other side room to climb down. I think we should play a clip from Secretary Kerry, actually, because it was quite a revealing interview. Let's take a listen to what he said.
President Trump really missed the greatest opportunity of all, which was to open up the potential that without war, you could actually reach an agreement. Where is the negotiation? Where is the trod path here of him putting proposals in front of Iran and saying, hey, I didn't like this in the JCPOA, but if you'll change that with me, then we can cut a deal that goes beyond where they were. And here are some other things we could do. I mean, there was none of that. That's diplomacy. And war is the failure of diplomacy.
I suppose Trump's supporters would say, well, yeah, but that strategy didn't work. The deal got torn up. Iran cheated around the edges anyway. You can't trust them.
Sure, but there's a cost to that. And the cost is that when you call out a nation's leadership or call them scum, you close the climb down route, not just for them, but for you. And then it goes back to the old adage, which I used to listen to quite a lot when I was in the military, is that the only option then available is the blunt tool of foreign policy, which ultimately is the military.
Interesting stuff. That interview, incidentally, with Secretary John Kerry is there on the YouTube security playlist. Do take a look at that, along with all the interviews we've done this week alongside the NATO summit. That's it for this week. Mikey, thank you as ever. We'll see you for the next one. Thanks for watching.